Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador Volker, in the now famous call transcript, the bottom of page 3, President Trump said this: I heard you had a prosecutor and he was shut down, and that's really unfair. Just for clarification, do you believe President Trump was talking about Lutsenko or Shokin?
Shokin.
Shokin. All right, thank you so much. That's what I thought as well. Mr. Morrison, you testified in your deposition that you had issues with Colonel VINDMAN's judgment. Is that right?
It is, sir.
And you said specifically that you had concerns with Colonel VINDMAN exercising, quote, appropriate judgment as to whom he said what. Is that right?
It is, sir.
You testified that Dr. Hill, your predecessor at NSC, told you that she had concerns about Colonel VINDMAN's judgment. Is that right?
It is, sir.
And you testified that Colonel VINDMAN did not always adhere to the chain of command. Is that right?
I believe so, yes, sir.
You testified that you were aware of issues with Colonel VINDMAN trying to access information outside his lane. Is that correct?
Sir, I believe I stated that I was aware that there were those who were concerned about that. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. You testified that Colonel VINDMAN was not included on certain trips. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you testified that colleagues expressed concerns to you about Colonel VINDMAN leaking information. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Now, when I asked Colonel VINDMAN why he didn't go to you with his concerns about the call, even though you, his boss, had no concerns about anything being, I think your language was, nothing improper, nothing illegal on the call, I asked Colonel VINDMAN earlier this morning why he didn't go to you and instead went and talked to the lawyers, his brother, Secretary Kent, and one other person that he wouldn't tell us and chairmanship wouldn't allow him to tell us. When I asked him why he did that, he indicated that the lawyers had instructed him to do that and he tried to get a hold of you. Is that fair?
Sir, I watched part of the proceedings this morning. I heard him say that. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, one thing that Chairman Schiff brought up at the end of this morning's hearing, he pointed out that you, Colonel VINDMAN's boss, also went to the lawyers. But your reason for going to the lawyers was a little different, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think you had a few things that Mr. Castor and you talked about earlier in today's hearing, but I think at the top of your list was you were concerned about the contents of the call leaking out. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
And that's exactly what happened, isn't it?
Sir, I don't know. I don't know that the contents leaked out. There was a whistleblower complaint. The president chose to declassify the MEMCON.
Well, it seems to me you were prophetic, Mr. Morrison, because you said in your statement today, as I stated during my deposition, I feared at the time of the call on July 25th how the disclosure of the contents of the call would play in Washington's political climate. My fears have been realized. It seems to me you saw what might happen, and it sure enough did. Fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And we get all this. I mean, we get all this, and that's the part that gets me. We get all this, these hearings, these weeks, the basement and the bunker in the basement of the Capitol, and 4 facts that we keep coming back to have never changed, will never change. We've heard from both of you today that confirm these fundamental facts. We got the call transcript, as you've both said. No linkage to security assistance dollars and investigations in the call transcript. We've got the 2 individuals who were on the call. They've both said no linkage, no pressure, no pushing. We've got the fact that the Ukrainians didn't even know aid had been withheld until August 29th. And most importantly, the Ukrainians did nothing as far as starting, promising to start, announcing they were going to start, investigation, did nothing, and the aid got released. And I believe it got released because of what we've been talking about, the good work of Ambassador Volker and others. I believe that's why it happened. And yet here we are. And you called it all. You saw this coming. That's why you went to the lawyers. That's why you wanted to. That's why the concern was there. And that's the part that's most troubling. I yield back, Mr. Chair. I yield to the gentleman from Ohio.
Ambassador Volker, on Daily Mail, they currently have this headline. It says, Ukraine Special Envoy Kurt Volker walks back his closed-door testimony and says he, quote, has now learned there was a link between U.S. military aid and a Biden probe. That's not your testimony today, is it?
I don't believe that's in my testimony.
Thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Welch.
Thank you. Just following up on Mr. Jordan, the easiest way to avoid investigation is to not do anything wrong. I want to talk a little bit about why we're here. Official government actions can't be traded for help in a political campaign. Let me give an analogy and ask each of you if you agree. Could a mayor of a city withhold funding for the police department budget unless the police chief agreed to open up an investigation on a political rival? Mr. Morrison?
In that hypothetical, no, I don't think he should do that.
Yeah. And Ambassador Volker, sure you agree?
Yes.
And the same would be true if it were a governor withholding the budget request of the state police unless the state police agreed to conduct an investigation on a political rival. You would agree?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
In your view, is it any different for a member of Congress? Of course not, right? Would you agree that the president has the same obligation as the mayor, as the governor, as the member of Congress to not withhold aid unless he gets an investigation into a political rival? Mr. Morrison?
Yes, sir, I would agree with that hypothetical.
I would agree.
Thanks. And we're having a debate here, both sides, as to how to read what's plainly before us, the presidential phone call where the president ignored the work of the advisors in the National Security Council talking points and instead chose to talk about the Bidens and talk about Hunter Biden and ask for an investigation. So we are just going to have to debate that. But isn't the principle that no person, including the president, is above the law absolutely essential and worth the effort to make certain that we continue to guarantee? Ambassador Morrison?
Sir, I haven't been promoted.
I'm sorry, Ambassador Volker? I'm sorry, pardon me.
Yes.
Yeah, and Mr. Morrison?
Sir, the rule of law is essential to our democracy.
It's so true. You know, we've had some discussions and challenge from the other side that the president has authority in foreign policy to do what he likes. And in fact, he does. You know, a recent president by President Trump to take our troops out of Syria and allow the Turkish forces to go in literally meant that some Kurdish families went to bed Saturday night and woke up Sunday morning, packed their kids and fled for their lives. A lot of people, including both sides of the aisle, totally disagreed with that. But the president has the authority to do it, impulsive as that decision may have been, unwise as it may have been, as threatening to our national security. We're not talking about that here. And Ambassador Volker, I've listened to your testimony and I take it and thank you for making efforts to try to advance what had been a bipartisan Ukraine policy. Help Ukraine get rid of corruption, help resist Russian aggression. But what you came to learn painfully is that there was a sidebar Ukraine policy with Giuliani as the advocate, and it appears Ambassador Sondland is very much involved. Is that correct?
I don't know everything about that, sir.
You don't, but as you have been involved and with the benefit of hindsight, while you were working on what you thought was stopping aggression and ending in eliminating corruption, there was a side deal here to get investigations going, correct?
Yeah. So, yes, sir, my objective was purely focused on support for Ukraine, national security, and I now have learned through other testimony about the president's statement about investigating Biden and other conversations that I did not know about.
Right. And thank you for that, and thank you for your candor about Vice President Biden's integrity and service. But the bottom line here is at the end of the day, we're going to have to make a judgment about what the president was up to with respect to that request for the favor and how it repudiated the policy that was the bipartisan effort in Ukraine and raises questions about he, in that hypothetical example I gave of the mayor, held himself to be above the law. I yield back.
Gõ cửa trái tim van anh được vào, dù tình xót đau chung thân huyệt đau, ngủ vùi với chim bao nỗi niềm mắt xanh xao, nhưng em vẫn ngóng tim anh mở cửa. Gõ cửa trái tim sao anh hững hờ, ngõ hồn tái tê năm canh thẫn thờ, nhện lòng mắc răng tơ để một mối bơ vơ, khi không anh nhốt em trong đợi chờ. Bằng vàng nên tiếng kêu nghe bẽ bàng, để em gõ cửa miên man mà anh không chút oan than. Em buồn lang thang gõ cửa trái tim, nghe xa nghìn trùng đèn mờ hắt hiu cô đơn tận cùng, đàn lỡ phím sai cung, tình này cũng mông lung, tìm anh ai khóa để em lạnh lùng. Gõ cửa trái tim van anh được vào, dù tình xót đau chung thân huyệt đau, ngủ vùi với chim bao nỗi niềm mắt xanh xao, nhưng em vẫn ngóng tim anh mở cửa. Gõ cửa trái tim sao anh hững hờ, ngõ hồn tái tê năm canh thẫn thờ, nhện lòng mắc răng tơ để một mối bơ vơ, khi không anh nhốt em trong đợi chờ. Anh bằng vàng nên tiếng kêu nghe bẽ bàng, để em gõ cửa miên man mà anh không chút oan than. Em buồn lang thang gõ cửa trái tim, nghe xa nghìn trùng đèn mờ hắt hiu cô đơn tận cùng, đàn lỡ phím sai cung, tình này cũng mông lung, tìm anh ai khóa để em lạnh lùng. Đàn lỡ phím sai cung, tình này cũng